Hi, my name is Chris Kelly, and this is One-on-One with the Atlantic Council of Canada. So today I'm privileged to be able to speak with James Bridger, a former ACC intern who currently works as a maritime security consultant at Delek Systems in Herndon, Virginia. Delek Systems is a private defense contractor, and it focuses on maritime security across the globe. So thank you for taking the time to speak with me, James.
Thank you for having me.
And let's get started. So first question, what sparked your interest in maritime security?
Well, I grew up in Victoria, sailing a lot, and did my undergrad out in Nova Scotia, so I've always had kind of a real maritime interest, but the security aspect from an academic perspective started, it was 2008, and I was trying to decide what to do for my undergrad thesis, and this was the year that Somali piracy just sort of exploded onto the world scene, and I remember sitting there thinking, this is crazy that it's 2008 and we've got, pirates and speedboats with Kalashnikovs able to hijack oil tankers and, basically terrorize shipping in a huge area. And from that thesis, I moved forward and started an internship here at the Atlantic Council a couple of years later, doing more general maritime security, and got interested in counter-smuggling and trafficking and maritime terrorism, port security, territorial disputes. And from there it just became sort of a niche thing that I've found a very fascinating world, and something that there's so many elements to it, both bringing an academic touch to what's largely an operational endeavor.
Very good, yeah. And so my next question is, why is this issue important for Canada and NATO?
Well, for Canada, the problem that you see stated a lot is maritime blindness, is the expression that, we're a country bordering 3 oceans and have the longest coastline in the world, but, to your average citizen, particularly, if you're away from the coast in Montreal, Toronto, Calgary, what have you, is that role that a secure maritime environment plays in Canadian security and prosperity just seems so far away. We don't think that the bananas you get or a sweater from Walmart are coming on a ship that's come from somewhere else, that there's all these security concerns from point A to point B that have to be addressed. And for NATO, it's almost in the name of the North Atlantic that this is their first sort of main mission was protecting and securing that, and the alliance now, as it's become involved in its counterterrorism mission in the Mediterranean and counter-piracy off Somalia, really has sort of defined its role as a contributing organization in a larger global maritime security regime.
Excellent. Now you mentioned Somalia, and 2 issues that you addressed in your recent article in Foreign Policy concerned maritime security and private military companies. I was wondering if you can expand, based on your background on this topic, on the development or the trajectories of these 2 issues in the future.
Well, the private military companies and the role they've played in addressing Somali piracy is an interesting one. This was the idea of having armed guards, private armed guards posted aboard ships to ward off potential pirate attacks was initially a very controversial idea. Flag states and shipping companies didn't want to adopt this. There was worry that you would escalate the level of violence, that you could have some sort of environmental disaster, if an oil tanker that is shot up in a firefight, or whose authority are these guards under. But as piracy worsened, the community really, particularly the shipping community, really came around to this idea, and it's now estimated that about 60 to 80% of vessels transiting through the high-risk area are employing armed guards, and it's certainly one of the most significant factors in the decline we've seen over the last year and a half. That said, there's still a lot of issues of regulation and the authority that the guards are under, how weapons are stored and moved in and out of ports and in and out of on-off of ships. And then you also have private companies playing a role in capacity building and port security and other situations in Somalia.
So 2 issues that will definitely continue to influence the security situation in Somalia. So my final question is on the topic of your discussion tonight at the ACC. How can NATO and the African Union work more closely together moving forward?
Well, this relationship between NATO and the African Union is a relatively recent one that started with NATO assisting with the African Union mission in Sudan and Darfur logistically, and again with the African Union mission in Somalia. But there really was a point of divergence over operations in Libya, with NATO deciding to vigorously enforce the UN-sanctioned no-fly zone, and the AU feeling that it was being sidelined through its own diplomatic efforts. But maritime security is an area where both organizations have common ground, and both organizations have rewritten their maritime security strategies recently. And as we've seen, NATO is now engaged in a degree of capacity building across the East African coast, in Djibouti and Tanzania and the Seychelles and Kenya. And now the focus is really on West Africa, where we're seeing a huge spike in piracy and other maritime crime, where I think there's a great need for capacity building, and I think this is the type of relationship we're going to see moving forward in sort of the 21st century global security architecture, in which you have multiple actors: NATO, the EU, the US, UK, France acting bilaterally, China, India, the African Union, the sub-bodies of the African Union, all working collaboratively to create a sort of security architecture. And I think there's been a lot that's been learned from how NATO's addressed piracy in East Africa, and how that can be built on elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. So definitely a lot of developments to look forward to, and I would like to thank you once again for sitting down with me, and I look forward to your talk later this evening. Thank you so much, James.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.